The sun bled out behind the mesas, staining the sky the color of rusted iron. Dust rolled across the empty yard like a warning. Clara May stepped onto the warped porch boards, her fingers clenched around the deed she'd found beneath a loose floor plank. Her boots scraped the wood, sharp against the evening hush. Ezekiel Crow swayed in the doorway, a whiskey bottle dangling from his fist. His eyes were red coals, his grin a slit of contempt. "You going somewhere, girl?" His voice rasped like dry rope. Clara lifted the paper. "I know what you did. You forged Mama's name. The ranch is ours, not yours to sell." He laughed, a sound that cracked the night. "A woman's name don't buy land out here. You think some judge cares?" "I care," she said, her voice low but steady. He stepped forward, boots grinding grit, and snatched the deed. "You don't know when to keep quiet." The back of his hand came fast, the slap ringing louder than the cicadas. Clara staggered against the rail, splinters biting her palms. From the ridge beyond the corral, a lone rider reined in his horse. Jonas Braddock watched, hat brim shadowing his weathered face. He said nothing, but his jaw set hard as a branding iron. Clara straightened, blood on her lip, eyes burning. "No more lies will stand," she whispered. Ezekiel's grin died. "You think you can shame me? You belong where I say." He shoved her toward the steps, the bottle smashing on the porch, glass scattering like frozen rain. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of mesquite smoke and distant thunder. Dust spiraled around them, tiny storms dancing in the dying light. "You'll regret this, mouth," he growled. "Sun'll rise, and you'll see who owns this land." Clara met his gaze, unflinching. "Not you. Not ever." For a heartbeat the world went still. Only the low creak of the porch and the far-off cry of a coyote broke the silence. Jonas tightened his grip on the reins, eyes narrowing. The night was far from over, and the desert itself seemed to hold its breath. The desert woke cruel and early, a pale sun clawing over the horizon. Clara's wrists burned where the rope bit deep, tied tight to the dead mesquite. Sand stung her eyes as the wind hissed across the flats. Ezekiel Crow swung back into his saddle, the leather creaking beneath his weight. His breath reeked of last night's whiskey. "You wanted freedom," he spat, tugging the reins. "Here it is. Let the buzzards keep you company." Clara strained against the rope. "You won't break me." He barked a dry laugh. "Girl, the desert'll do what I don't have to." The horse snorted, hooves grinding stone, and then he turned away. The sound of retreating hoofbeats faded into the endless heat. Silence. Only the whisper of grit sliding across rock. The sun climbed higher, each ray a knife. Clara's throat rasped for water that wasn't there. Sweat dried as soon as it formed, leaving only salt and the copper taste of fear. She closed her eyes, seeing her mother's face, soft as spring rain, murmuring a lullaby lost to time. "Hold on, child. Hold on." A shadow circled overhead. A vulture, slow and patient, traced wide loops in the bleached sky. Another joined it. Clara's pulse slowed. She twisted, rope tearing her skin raw. Pain flared, but the knot held fast. The desert wavered before her, mirages of silver pools that vanished when she blinked. The wind shifted, carrying a sound, distant, rhythmic. Hoofbeats? Or her own heartbeat echoing madness. She pressed her cheek to the splintered bark, listening, closer now, definite. A horse, steady and unhurried. Her cracked lips parted. "Here. Over here." The words rasped out like smoke. A shape emerged from the shimmer. A rider, broad-shouldered, hat pulled low. Jonas Braddock, his outline hardened against the searing light like a figure cut from stone. He dismounted without a word, boots sinking into the sand. The hunting knife flashed, slicing through the rope with a single sure stroke. Clara sagged forward, the world tilting. Jonas caught her before she fell, his calloused hands steady. "Easy," he said, voice low as distant thunder. "You're safe now." The desert wind howled across the flats, but for the first time all morning Clara felt its bite soften. Lantern light flickered against the rough-hewn beams of Jonas Braddock's canyon ranch, throwing long, restless shadows across the walls. The scent of sage and wood smoke drifted through the cool night air as Clara lay wrapped in a wool blanket on the worn settee. Her skin still carried the angry red marks of the rope, her lips cracked from sun and thirst. Jonas moved with quiet precision, grinding dried leaves into a clay bowl. The stone pestle rasped, a steady rhythm beneath the low moan of the wind outside. He poured hot water from the kettle, steam rising like pale ghosts, and stirred the makeshift medicine until it turned a deep, healing green. Clara stirred, voice no louder than a sigh. Why help me?" Jonas knelt beside her, his weathered face half lit by the lantern's glow. "Because a man who rides past suffering ain't a man at all." He offered the steaming cup. "Drink slow. Sage'll draw the heat out." She took a trembling sip, the bitter taste sharp but grounding. "He'll come," she whispered. "Ezekiel. He won't stop." Jonas's jaw tightened. "Let him come." His eyes, steel gray and unyielding, held hers. "You're safe here tonight." The room settled into a hush broken only by the pop of the fire. Outside, the canyon wind whistled through the rocks like a distant hymn. Clara's heartbeat slowed, matching the soft crackle of the flames. Her gaze wandered to the shelves lined with old books, the neat rows of worn saddles and bridles. This place, remote and carved from stone, felt untouchable, a world apart from the chaos she had fled. "You don't even know me," she said finally. Jonas's expression softened. "I know enough. You're someone worth saving." A single tear slipped down her cheek, hot against the cool night air. She brushed it away before it could fall. Beyond the canyon walls, coyotes yipped under a silver moon. Jonas stood checking the rifle propped by the door. "Get some rest," he murmured. "The desert may be cruel, but it won't cross this threshold." Clara let her eyes close, the warm hum of the lantern wrapping around her like a quiet promise. For the first time in days, sleep came without fear. The harvest moon rose like a blood-orange coin, drenching the canyon in copper light. Jonas Braddock stood at the edge of his porch, rifle cradled in the crook of his arm, every sense sharpened by the hush of the desert night. Even the wind seemed to pause, waiting. Far off, a lone coyote yowled, then silence again. Hoofbeats followed, slow and deliberate, each one striking the earth like a warning drum. Clara stepped into the doorway, lantern in hand. The glow lit her bruised cheek, her eyes still shadowed by the desert's cruelty. "Jonas," she whispered, "someone's coming." He didn't turn. "I hear it." From the darkness beyond the corral, a rider emerged, Ezekiel Crow. His black hat brim cut the moonlight, a pistol gleaming at his hip. He reined in just short of the porch, the horse snorting clouds of silver breath. "Evening, Braddock," Ezekiel drawled, his voice slick with whiskey and menace. "I reckon you got something belongs to me." Jonas's jaw tightened. "She's not yours. Never was." Ezekiel leaned forward, eyes like cold iron. "You think you can hide her in these rocks? She's my blood, my right." Clara's breath hitched. She gripped the lantern tighter but stepped beside Jonas, her shoulders square. "You lost that right when you left me to die." The outlaw's grin faltered, then twisted into a sneer. "You got a sharp tongue for a girl who should be grateful I took her in." Jonas lifted the rifle just enough for the moon to catch the steel. "Turn around, Crow. This land won't bury another soul tonight." For a long moment the world held its breath. The horse shifted, hooves scraping stone. Ezekiel's eyes flicked to the rifle barrel, then back to Clara. "This ain't over," he said, voice low and venomous. He spat into the dirt, the dark stain gleaming in the lantern light. "The night's young, and I got friends who don't scare easy. He yanked the reins, spinning the horse. Hoofbeats pounded into the canyon's depths until only the echo remained. Jonas lowered the rifle but kept his eyes on the horizon. Clara exhaled, the lantern trembling in her grasp. The wind returned at last, carrying the bitter scent of smoke and distant thunder, a promise of the storm to come. Morning broke hard and cold, the canyon wrapped in a pale blue mist. Jonas saddled his chestnut mare without a word, the creak of leather the only sound. Clara stood near the porch rail, shawl tight around her shoulders. Bruises had darkened to deep violet, but her eyes carried a steady fire. They rode into town as the sun edged above the mesa, dust lifted from the trail, hanging in the air like old secrets. Wooden storefronts came into view, mercantile, blacksmith, the weathered jailhouse leaning against the dawn. Folks paused in their work as the pair approached, whispers rising like dry leaves. Sheriff Abel Carter waited outside the office, coat collar turned against the chill. A veteran of too many gunfights, his eyes were the color of iron filings. He scanned Clara's torn dress and the rope burns on her wrists, and the muscle in his jaw ticked. Jonas dismounted first. "Sheriff, we've got a problem by the name of Ezekiel Crow." Carter's gaze flicked to Clara. "Tell me what he's done." Her voice was low but steady. "He forged my mama's deed, beat me, left me to die in the desert." The sheriff's stare hardened. "You sure of the forgery?" Clara pulled a crumpled scrap from her pocket, the surviving half of the Assad. Tolan deed, edges scorched by lantern flame. "He signed her name after she passed." Carter studied it, thumb brushing the faded ink. "That'll hang him if we can pin it." He nodded to Jonas. "Any witnesses?" "Found her tied to a mesquite," Jonas said. "Tracks all over the sand. Got the rope." He handed over the blood-stained length, coiled in his saddlebag. The sheriff took it without flinching. "I'll ride out with deputies by sundown, but a snake like Crow strikes hardest when cornered." A hush settled over the street. Shop doors cracked open, townsfolk leaning to listen, lanterns flickering in the morning gloom. Hope, fragile as new grass, began to stir. Carter fixed Jonas with a steady look. "Keep her close. Lock your doors tonight. Justice moves, but it moves deliberate." Jonas tipped his hat. "We'll be ready." As they turned to leave, the wind picked up, carrying the scent of distant rain and the promise of reckoning. The night fell thick and red, the harvest moon climbing behind a bank of bruised clouds. Jonas Braddock checked the iron latch on the barn door, lantern in one hand, rifle in the other. Every shadow seemed to breathe. Clara stood by the corral fence, shawl tight around her shoulders, eyes fixed on the dark horizon. The wind carried the smell of mesquite smoke, sharp, wrong. Jonas felt it too. "Inside," he said, voice low but firm. A sudden crack split the night, hoofbeats, fast and many. Then came the glow, torches bobbing like angry fireflies against the black canyon walls. Clara's breath caught. "It's him." Jonas swung the barn doors wide and pushed her inside. "Stay low. Don't move till I say." The gang rode hard into the yard, a half-moon of men with bandanas masking their faces. Ezekiel Crow led them, black hat tilted, eyes gleaming with mean delight. He carried a torch in one hand, a pistol in the other. "Braddock," his voice cut through the dark. "Bring her out or I burn this place to the ground." Jonas stepped onto the porch, rifle raised, lantern light flickering across his weathered face. "You set one spark on my land and you'll answer for it." Ezekiel laughed, a harsh bark that sent the horses skittering. "You think that pop gun scares me? She's mine. Always was." Inside the barn, Clara gripped the shotgun Jonas had pressed into her hands. Her heart pounded like a war drum. The first torch sailed through the air, striking the corral fence. Dry wood caught fast, flames leaping skyward, cattle bawled and scattered, hooves thundering like a storm. Jonas fired a warning shot, the crack echoing across the canyon. "Back off, Crow!" The outlaws answered with gunfire. Bullets sparked against the stone chimney, splinters biting the porch rails. Jonas ducked behind a post, working the lever action with steady precision. Smoke thickened, carrying the bitter taste of burning cedar. Sparks danced across the yard like furious stars. Clara burst from the barn, shotgun braced. "Leave us!" she shouted, voice raw but unshaken. Ezekiel's sneer faltered at the sight of her, but he spurred his horse forward, torch raised high. Another shot rang out, shattering the night and sending the torch spinning. Flames lit the canyon walls like dawn, and the battle for the ranch roared to life.